So you're steeped in synthesizers, music, and these really big and popular acts, but at this point your love was really classical music, film, and TV. You mentioned you did a PBS special. Is that what led you in the direction of scoring for picture?
Yeah, that's a great question. I remember noticing music in television and film early in my childhood. And it was like an epiphany. You know, I realized that there was this marriage of these different art forms, in a sense, visual and oral, that were much greater than the sum of the parts. And immediately when I started to score, when I understood what I was doing, those early things I was doing, I was literally just writing music and putting up against the picture. And a lot of times I didn't even have a picture to put it up against, and no synchronization whatsoever. Where I really started to notice the power of the combination of the two. And I also liked the fact that it wasn't all about me and my music. It was all about all of the parts that went together, from lighting to the the on-set sound to animation. I actually had a friend from high school who went to the same college, and she was a dance major, and asked me to score her final dance presentation for graduation. So that was my first chance to work with live dance, and even that was brought a whole new slew of challenges and also wonderful kind of discoveries of the subtleties and how it all played together. And then when I was still in San Diego, before I really got heavy into doing film stuff and record stuff, I scored the elephant show at the San Diego Wild Animal Park. And that was unbelievable. I mean, and to go and sit in the stadium, and hear my music and hear this incredible voiceover. Christina Pickles did the voiceover, and she was, at the time, she was the star of St. Elsewhere, this TV show that was running at the time.
Oh, right.
And to see this all come together and watch the audience react and know that I'd written this stuff in my tiny little studio in downtown San Francisco. Actually, it's another funny little story. I rented an empty office above Ingrid Croce's restaurant, and she was the widow of Jim Croce, and the musician who had all the hits in the 70s, who died prematurely in a plane crash. So Ingrid and I are very close friends, and she was supporting me and my music by giving me, for basically rent-free, this gorgeous turn-of-the-century office in downtown San Diego.
Yeah, I mean, you're giving the term "small world" a whole new meaning here.
Oh yeah, it really. I mean, it really is. I mean, the world gets smaller every day, but the people that influenced me and supported me, I can't tell you what a difference that made in my ability to keep doing it and keep believing I could, continue to make a living and raise a family and have a quote-unquote normal life and be a full-time musician. So yeah, it was all these things kind of came together, and it was in San Diego. I'm just kind of looking at your questions here. It was in San Diego that I first met John Archer, who was one half of the duo on American Gramophone of Checkfield. And Checkfield was a very successful, popular act, and John Slavichek was his name. That's where the Czech comes from, but he went by John Archer. He saw in me something really raw, and I had a lot of melodic sense that he hadn't heard before, and also my textures and my keyboard work was unique enough to where he went out on a limb and got me signed to American Gramophone. So that was how I ended up on American Gramophone, was kind of my San Diego Checkfield connection. And John was a huge influence on my production chops, because he was a producer who was really into the weeds of technology at the time. And I remember we mastered my first record digitally in 1988. So we recorded it, once we did our full mix to a beautiful analog 2-track master, we did another mix to 2 tracks on a Sony Betamax machine, just using the digital tracks for the master. And that was the first time I'd ever even known there was anything such as digital audio. And again, he was way ahead of the curve in just having this pristine sound with natural instruments in the studio. So again, a lot of great influences on my work.
Getting into the American Gramophone segment of your career with Chip Davis, I mean, his process has always fascinated me. I first heard his Christmas album and his rendition of Good King Wenceslas ages ago. I was really impressed by his marriage of those themes with synthesizers, and I hadn't realized Chip Davis is someone who got into business creating demos for hi-fi equipment and electronic stores. And it was this really unique way of getting your music out into the public, going from demo showrooms, and all of a sudden he's selling millions of albums.
The guy owns Omaha, Nebraska. I mean, he is, he stayed in his hometown, and he built a record company and studios and things that you really, from an economic standpoint, you could have never done that in New York, LA, or San Francisco. What he was able to do there was a complex. And also, he was a real entrepreneur in that he handled all his own merchandise. He warehoused and inventoried the records. It was really a grassroots, homegrown affair. And you're right. Every Christmas album that he would come out with, as cheesy as it might sound, were hugely popular around the world. To put a drum beat, behind Deck the Halls was something that no one had ever done. And he got there first. And you can make fun of the music to some degree, but the quality and the success, I mean, he tops the charts every time he comes out with something new. Especially the Christmas. I think he's topped every album he's come out with. All of his Christmas 1 through 20 or whatever he's had has been the number one holiday album when it comes out. So yeah, I mean, he really was one of the first. And then after him, it was Windham Hill, and it kind of put instrumental music on the popular music, landscape. And I'm very, very honored and proud to have been a part of that.
That really sounds like an incredible opportunity. So, how many records did you do with American Gramophone?
I only did one full-length solo album, which was Architects of Change, and then I had pieces on some of his compilations that I wrote specifically for them. And then I've got some credits as a player on some of the Checkfield records and things like that. But I only had really kind of a one-record deal with them. I had a good relationship, but I was kind of moving away from that kind of music. It's funny, I'm known for my instrumental music, whether it's scores or the Architects album, which did really, really well around the world and stuff, but I've always been a songwriter. And at that time, I was really jonesing to do more pop-oriented songs. And so they wanted to kind of do Architects too, and I wasn't really amenable to that, and I hadn't made any money off the sales of the record, really. I mean, that's a whole nother story, but I did own the copyrights, and I did own the masters, and I was able to, the stuff on Architects of Change has been used on hundreds of commercials and TV shows, and the Olympics and the Super Bowl, and so it turned out to be a successful album for me from a publishing standpoint, but not so much from a commercial disc sale thing where there was an old term back then, the album shipped gold and returned platinum, which means somehow you owe on more records than they ever manufactured, or something like that.
Right.
Yeah, that's a whole, it's a very tricky industry to be successful in, but the compositions themselves had a nice long life and continue to, so.
Yeah, seriously, congratulations on that. I mean, even if you didn't get the residuals, right?
Yeah, it all comes around. The most money I've ever made on anything I've ever written was an infomercial, so you never know where that's going to come from. It's amazing. I mean, like I said, I wrote music for, Proactive Skincare, and it bought me a piece of property.
Oh my gosh.
Literally. It's unbelievable. Like you said, the same piece of music, playing on an infomercial at 2 a.m. in Pocatello, Idaho that pays, $3.42. That same piece of music in the same show plays in New York City on a Friday at 9 p.m. and it pays $3,000.
Right.
So, you extrapolate that across all the cable markets in the United States, and it becomes bigger than having network television shows on the air. So again, it's an interesting, unique business that I've come to love and hate all at the same time.